Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a chilling true crime case study of digital manipulation. We're looking at a deeply unsettling evolution in cybercrime, literally a scenario where a smartphone becomes a weapon of psychological terror. We're going to unpack how a carefully crafted illusion managed to completely isolate, terrify, and ultimately rob two highly educated retirees, all without the criminals ever setting a single foot inside their home.
2.4 crore rupees. Just let that staggering number sink in for a second. This represents the absolute devastation of a retired elderly couple in Kerala who were robbed of their entire life savings. I mean, think about the decades of hard work, the careful budgeting, the sacrifices required to build that kind of financial safety net for retirement. And in just a matter of days, through sheer manipulation, it was completely wiped out.
And you know, the victims behind this data aren't just faceless statistics. We're talking about a 69-year-old retired teacher and his 72-year-old wife who is a retired government homeopathy doctor. They hadn't even purchased a home of their own. They were living in a rented house, carefully preserving this exact fund to make sure they could cover their medical expenses in old age. Instead, that security was completely stolen from them.
So, let's get into part one, the crime, virtual arrest.
Think about it. How do you force someone to hand over everything they own without physically threatening them? Well, you use the illusion of the law. This is exactly what authorities are now calling a virtual arrest. It essentially turns your own smartphone into a prison cell. These scammers use fabricated authority, high-pressure tactics, and relentless fear to completely bypass your logical defenses. You aren't behind physical bars, for sure, but the psychological walls they build around you are honestly just as impenetrable.
Now, to really understand how this works, we absolutely have to look at the targets. This happened in Kanhangad, Kerala, to an elderly couple living entirely alone. And, more importantly, as the husband himself actually noted, they hardly ever used mobile phones. They were completely unfamiliar with the landscape of modern digital scams. This total isolation and lack of technological fluency made them the absolute perfect targets for the nightmare that was about to unfold.
Which brings us to part two, the 11-day digital prison.
You know, this wasn't a quick phone call where someone is tricked into sharing a quick OTP. No way. It was a sustained, exhausting hostage situation conducted entirely through a screen. The scammers strategically escalated the fear just to wear the couple down. It started on the morning of August 10th with an international call. A man speaking Hindi claimed to be from TRI, the Telecom Regulatory Authority in India, dropping this terrifying news that the wife was somehow involved in a CBI money laundering probe. Minutes later, a WhatsApp video call rings. Boom, now there's a man in a police uniform on the screen. And because of the language barrier, the scammers even brought a translator onto the call to translate from Hindi to Malayalam, making sure the couple understood every single threatening word.
When you track the timeline of this ordeal, it shows exactly how long these scammers maintained the pressure. From that very first contact on August 10th, they didn't immediately ask for money. They actually spent days building the reality of the threat. They staged a whole court hearing on the 12th. It wasn't until a full week later, between the 19th and the 21st, that the actual massive theft took place, just before the victims finally managed to escape to the police on the 22nd.
To make the threat feel undeniably real, the scammers fabricated an incredibly elaborate, frankly absurd story. They claimed that during a raid on the residence of former Jet Airways chairman Naresh Goyal, the wife's ID card and bank details were miraculously recovered. They flashed a fake Aadhaar card and a really blurry ATM card on the video call. They used these forged documents to completely override the total absurdity of the situation. I mean, think about it. These quiet retirees living in a rented house in Kerala had absolutely zero connection to aviation billionaires or high-stakes corporate money laundering. But panic makes it completely impossible to see the obvious.
The level of control these scammers established was absolute. It's terrifying. The couple was explicitly ordered to stay right in front of their mobile phone, with the video call active at all times. They were told they were under virtual arrest. They literally had to ask the scammers on the screen for permission just to use the washroom. The wife even had to request formal approval to leave the frame for a pre-scheduled medical appointment. They were entirely stripped of their basic human autonomy.
Let's move to part three, the illusion of justice.
Okay, so to finalize this massive theft, the scammers couldn't just ask for the money. They had to make handing it over feel like a strict legal requirement to clear the couple's names. On August 12th, they orchestrated an incredibly elaborate theatrical performance. They told the couple their case was being heard by a CBI court in Mumbai.
Over the video call, they showed a room set up to look exactly like a real courtroom, complete with a fake judge and fake lawyers. When the fake judge entered the frame, the elderly couple was actually ordered to stand up in their own living room out of respect. They were bombarded and confused with legal jargon they couldn't possibly follow. And then came the trap. They were told they needed to verify their bank accounts by transferring all their savings into what the scammers called Supreme Court accounts.
Believing they were genuinely complying with the highest court in the entire country, between August 19 and 21, this paralyzed, exhausted couple completely drained their life savings across just 4 massive transactions. 4 clicks. And decades of savings were gone, funneled directly into the scammers' network.
Now for part 4, breaking the illusion.
But, every digital illusion has a breaking point. And this one was entirely dependent on keeping the couple completely isolated from anyone with a clear, logical mind. The spell was finally broken when a relative unexpectedly visited their home. The husband was still sitting there, paralyzed in front of the active video call. The wife managed to quickly take the relative into another room and quietly explain the nightmare they were living. The relative, thankfully, instantly recognized it as a cyber fraud and urged them to get to the police right away. To escape the watchful eye of the camera, the husband pretended he just needed to go out to buy medicines. Instead, he rushed straight to his bank manager and then right to the police station. Unbelievably, the fraudsters even tried calling them while they were at the station, only abruptly disconnecting once they realized the couple had reached actual law enforcement.
Because the husband managed to act fast once that spell was broken, the rapid police response actually made a massive difference. The Kanhangad Cyber Police quickly registered a criminal case under the new BNS and IT Act sections. They immediately moved to freeze the destination bank accounts. Now, while the bulk of the money was unfortunately gone, they did manage to secure about 55 lakh rupees before the scammers could withdraw it. And now the police are actively working to trace the network and are launching really aggressive media campaigns to warn the public that these highly coordinated cases are surging.
But despite that partial recovery, the victims were left completely shattered. As the husband stated, they literally never knew such scams even existed. This whole case serves as a really dark, stark reminder of how incredibly vulnerable, isolated individuals are to these elaborate, high-pressure digital cons. You see, the psychological trauma of being held hostage in your own home often lingers far, far longer than the financial loss itself.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought to consider. We lock our physical doors to keep criminals out, right? But a virtual arrest just walks right through our screens. So, how secure is your digital front door? And more importantly, how secure are the elderly people in your own life who might not recognize these new threats? It's a conversation we all absolutely need to have today. Thank you so much for joining me to understand this critical topic. Stay informed and please, stay safe.